All right, we are live here on TikTok. We are waiting for people to join in the room. Decided to do another live. I've had more time this week, done several more lives than I have in the past. Got a lot to talk about. We got news, we got politics. Just because it's the weekend, stuff hasn't stopped. We still have all of the bullshit going on with the government shutdown. Government's not any closer to being open. Republicans are not willing to negotiate at all. They're not negotiating. As I said in a previous TikTok, or maybe one that I've got coming up that will go live here soon, if they were serious about negotiating, or maybe one that I've got coming up that will go live here soon, if they were serious about negotiating, they would be in Washington, D.C. The House of Representatives would be there, and they would make offers. They'd be saying, hey, Democrats, okay, we can't give you permanent Affordable Care Act subsidies, but how about 5 years? Something like that. They're not throwing that out there. They're not saying, hey, how about 50% of the Medicaid cuts restored? They're not saying that. All they're saying is, we want what we want, and you're going to give it to us. That's not negotiating. That's demanding. Now, you could say Democrats are doing the same thing, but they have an offer out there. They said, this is what we want, and nobody has made a counter offer to them yet. All they keep saying is no. If Republicans were serious about opening the government, they'd be there negotiating, and they would be having serious discussions. Suave de Boner is out there. Haven't seen him on for a bit here on my lives, but has joined frequently. Hopefully we get more people out there right now. Not seeing a lot of people coming in and staying. But we got a lot going on. You have Donald Trump going to Walter Reed for the second time in 6 months, claiming it is because he's got an overseas trip coming up and they wanted to make sure everything was good. Problem with that, why didn't he do that before he went to the UK? We didn't hear a thing about him having some kind of a, trip to the UK going to Walter Reed. That didn't happen. So what's changed? Is there something more wrong with him? And I don't believe for a second when they come out and say that, he's got his heart's 15 years younger than he is. I don't buy it for a second. I guarantee you there is problems out there. There's Asgard SG1. Good to see you. Suave de Boner says he's on his backup account. The other one got banned. Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot from a lot of creators, that accounts are getting banned. They're losing their mains. They're having to shift to backups. And even for some people that weren't really posting that much, they were just in comment sections that they're getting banned. And I have yet to get any community guidelines violations. I've had no bans. Now, if something happens and this account goes away, I will be... I might consider making a backup and trying to get back up, but it took me a long time to get to even the 10K that I've got now. I may just switch completely over to YouTube and say to hell with TikTok. I post all my stuff over on YouTube anyway. It would just simplify the process. But I'm not going anywhere if this account would happen to be banned. Getting a few more people out there. If you guys got questions, comments about news and politics, drop it in the comments. Would love to hear what people are thinking right now with everything going on. We've got the government shutdown going on, not looking like it is any closer to being resolved. You've got Donald Trump saying he's telling Pete Hegseth, figure out how to make sure payroll gets met. But problem is, does he really have the funds to do it? We don't know. And he can't turn around and say, just take funds from this or that. That should require congressional approval. Problem is, congressional Democrats aren't going to fight against it, because why would they? That would get blasted against them in the news. Well, see, they're just trying to fight so troops don't get paid. They're already trying to get the narrative spun against them, and Republicans aren't winning that battle right now. If they would go against Donald Trump's attempts to move money around to pay the troops, that would hurt them a lot in the media. Suave says MTG making sense. Yeah, I talked about that. That she's making sense because she's trying to separate herself from other Republicans. She's trying to set up for either a statewide run or something like that in Georgia. Maybe she tries to run for governor. Maybe she's thinking that Republicans don't win governor this time and she wants to be ready in 4 years. Maybe she's thinking 2 years going up against, I think Raphael Warnock's seat's up for re-election then. I know she wanted to run this time for governor or Senate, and Republicans told her no. The Republican establishment told her no. And I think she's trying to rebuild her brand a little bit, trying to get back into their favor or something so she can stick it to them and run for a statewide seat. But it's a bad day when MTG is the voice of reason out of the Republican Party. It shows you just how far you've dropped. Come on. Ugh. I got somebody here demanding a bunch of attention while I'm trying to do this here. But I've said before, she leaves things in the yard smarter than most Republicans. So we got, Democrats so far are holding on. They are holding the line right now when it comes to, holding out here. There's not a lot of division in the Democrats as far as that they need to maintain where they're at on the government shutdown. B. Davis says that's a really good dog. Yes, she is most of the time. And it's not even a complaint, but she is very needy when it comes to attention. Her personality is, I am here, you give me attention. Optimistic, thank you for the gift. I don't always call them out when they happen, but I do appreciate it. Thank you. And everybody who has gifted over the time I've been doing the lives, I do appreciate it. Now, you have, I don't know if you guys heard this or not. Earlier today, it came out that they fired thousands of people at the CDC. They all got an email, said, your services are no longer required. You're going to be cut. They all got an email, said, your services are no longer required. You're going to be cut. Okay. Well, these are highly trained people. Most of them have degrees. If they decide to bring people like that back or decide that, they actually need people in those positions, you can't just hire anybody off the street to get there. Can't do it. So, they go ahead and say, okay, we're letting you go. Well, much like a lot of the things with this administration, most of those cuts will get overturned in court because of union rules, etc. But then MSNBC broke the news earlier tonight that they've come out and said, hey, guess what? Just kidding. At least half are getting emails back saying, well, we're going to rehire you. Not that we never meant to fire you, but we're going to rehire you. We actually need you. Now, does that mean pay raise? Does that mean they come back with all of the benefits they had previously? All of those things? Don't know yet. And there's no guarantee that those people who were let go have to accept the rehire offer. They don't know yet. And there's no guarantee that those people who were let go have to accept the rehire offer. They may not. And they may end up coming back at higher pay rates than when they left. This administration is completely inept. They don't know what they're doing. And It is mind-boggling how people still think they're actually intelligent. Optimistic says, "You're welcome. I enjoy your lives." Well, thank on my YouTube page as well, and I could get it downloaded and do all those things. Um, and then I could get it downloaded and do all those things. So they go over there. If you want to check it out, if you can't stay for the whole thing, you just want to rewatch it. So I do try to do that for all of you. Suave says every firing is a blue voter in 20. If I worked for the government and a vote for a Republican again. Some things end up being more. Some things end up being more about or personal vendetta than necessarily policy. Even you mess with me, supporting you. There are companies that I worked for that I have not bought for. I didn't agree with, and I never gave them my money after that. I never gave them my money after that. And like you said, every and like you said, every person who gets fired is probably going to be someone voting blue, and a lot of them this year in Virginia, because a lot of them. Oh goodness. Oh goodness. Well, we're getting a lot of people jumping in and jumping out here. Hope we could get a few more people in here, keeping the conversation going. Optimistic says, if you would repeat the previous statement, live froze, keeping the conversation going. Optimistic says, if you would repeat the previous statement, live froze up. Oh, you're talking about in 26. I said some of them might be blue voters this year, because I believe Virginia's governor election is this year. So they'd be going to vote this year in Virginia, because a lot of people who work, not all, fair. Oh goodness. Oh goodness. Optimistic your other accounts. Optimistic your other accounts, I believe. Oh, when I froze up about Analytical Iowan on YouTube, Analytical Iowan on Spotify, or Analytical Iowan on Blue Sky. All of my TikToks end up over on YouTube. They end up on Blue Sky, and the audio ends up right now on Spotify. Still trying to figure out how to put video up over on Spotify. It's not as easy as getting the audio up, and I'm having issues with it. But look for me those places. I will keep putting content up. If this account happens to go away, I will still record my videos that will be going up first then on YouTube, and they'll still be out everywhere else. So look for me those places if something happens to where TikTok becomes unreliable. Still hoping we get more people out there to push the chat. TJ says it's better now that I'm off my Wi-Fi. Yeah, I wonder why the Wi-Fi is so bad. Because through, I have my Wi-Fi through my cellular provider. It's the same service, so I don't know why the Wi-Fi makes such a difference. But it seems like I glitch a little more when I'm on live on the Wi-Fi network. I've had more time this week, so I've been more willing to do lives, hoping my schedule kind of clears up to where I can be consistent about getting lives out at least one or two a week. I miss doing them. It's great having a conversation going with everybody out there, discussing everything that's going on. You get different viewpoints and trying to get things going. Every day there's so much going on that we need to discuss. And not always do I get all of the best ideas from just the news stories. Sometimes I get ideas from what people talk about in the live of, hey, maybe I should talk about that a little more or do a longer video. DJ, thank you for sharing. Thank you for kicking this thing out there. Maybe that'll get some people in here. But we got a lot going on. Donald Trump, of course, is going, I think he went golfing today, or he's going golfing tomorrow in the middle of the government shutdown yet again, showing he doesn't really care. He doesn't care that the government shut down. He doesn't care that it is affecting his administration's ability. He thinks it's great because it gives him the ability to do whatever he wants. And it really doesn't. The courts are routinely telling him no, no, and no. And even this Supreme Court, there's going to be a lot of things that they end up turning around and saying, yeah, we can't support you on that. Oliver's mom is out there. I recognize you from Boomer's Lives and TJ's Lives. Probably going to get a group of most of the... I recognize you from Boomer's Lives and TJ's Lives. Probably going to get a group of most of the regular from those shows, the ones that are available. Optimistic shared, thank you for doing that. You have Donald Trump going out and saying to Pete Hegseth, fund the paychecks, make sure the military gets paid. But how is he going to do that? How is he going to actually do that? Where's that money coming from? They claim it's from grant money that was never issued. But then why wasn't the grant money that was never issued flagged by Doge? It's a question to ask. Was it money they just didn't pay? Something that could have happened. Jules, good to see you. That's entirely possible that it's money that was supposed to be paid out that they never actually did anything with because, Donald Trump doesn't like to pay his bills. Look at his business record. And then beyond that, if there isn't any money in a bank account somewhere that they are claiming never got spent, they don't have a budget until Congress passes a budget. So there's no money to make sure the troops get paid. But Donald Trump will say, well, I told Hegseth to deal with it. And when they don't get paid, or if that paycheck gets late on the 15th, it's going to be on Pete Hegseth to make sure, or to blame them, or whatever. He's going to be the one that ends up ultimately being responsible. And it wouldn't surprise me if Donald Trump fires him over it. Will says, Trump is literally lying again. Yeah. Good to see you, Will. How do you know Donald Trump is lying? Simple. His mouth is moving. Unfortunately, it's the truth. He lies so much about everything because he doesn't care. He knows he can say whatever he wants. The media barely pushes back against him right now, and his voting base eats it up. All he does is lie to the American people, and he knows there's a section of this country that will cheer him, and they won't look any deeper. And like I said, with this military funding thing, he said, well, I told Hegseth to deal with it. The fact that it's not something that can just be dealt with the way he said doesn't matter to Donald Trump. He now has a scapegoat for if it blows up in his face. He won't be the one he now has a scapegoat for if it blows up in his face. He won't be the one that takes any heat. Will says waiting for groceries to go down. Yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Remember, he thought he invented the word groceries. He's not a well man. He's not well at all. And his second trip to Walter Reed in 6 months is proving that. I don't buy for a second that his heart is 15 years younger, that he's got the heart of a 65-year-old. Ain't no way. I don't believe it. Not for a minute. If he has the heart of a 65-year-old, I have a full head of hair. Just saying. Oh, goodness. Jules is back in. Nice to see you, Jules. Now, Democrats are trying to call Republicans bluffs on the shutdown. They said, hey, let's pay the military. We'll vote for it. And Republicans aren't coming back for a vote because Mike Johnson doesn't want to swear in Representative Grijalva because he doesn't want to force a vote for the Epstein files. Because he knows they're between a rock and a hard place. TJ says, let's hope it's an indication of things to come. Are you talking about his trip to Walter Reed and supposedly having a 15-year younger heart? Yeah, if that's what they're saying, the opposite's probably true. They probably told him you got the heart of a 95-year-old and you'll be lucky if you make it to Christmas. I know for those of you that follow the Rational Boomer, you know Ed likes to be, or whenever Ed's on, Ed likes to comment, he doesn't think Trump makes it to Thanksgiving. I think that might be a little generous there, but I don't think Donald Trump makes it to the end of his term. Oliver's mom says the right side of his face is drooping. Yeah, it happens. It's happened several times now, I think. And those are typically signs of strokes. And Joel says, I don't get any sound. And before any of you say it, yes, my volume is turned up. Well, I think my sound is going out to everybody else. So hopefully you can hear it. If not, this will be up over on YouTube and Spotify later, so you can catch whatever you missed. I hope your sound improves, though. Blue says they can hear just fine. Okay. So it's not on my end. Well, that's good to know. But yeah, his face is drooping. Donald Trump may be having minor strokes. We don't know. And with this administration and his attitude toward, I have to be seen as the fit of health, the peak of health, he's not letting people say what's really wrong with him. He may not even know because they don't want to tell him. I just hope Democrats do to everybody around Donald Trump to what they did to everybody about Joe Biden. Drag him through the mud for covering up and protecting his health. I really hope they do that. They should. Especially if they win as big in the midterms as I think they can do. Do Not Go Gently says, I wouldn't be surprised if they weekends at Bernie Trump when it does happen. Yeah. Well, that's what we were talking about when he disappeared the first time for like a week. We thought they were propping him up. If he goes behind the scenes and something happens, they're going to try to get their ducks in order for figuring out how to message it, how to do everything. We may not know for several days. Their worst fear is that he's out giving a speech somewhere and the Big Mac gets him and it's a very public thing and they can't deny it anymore. They want it to happen behind the scenes so they can make it and they can cover things up for as long as they can. Because they know J.D. Vance doesn't have the sway over the cult. He doesn't have the sway over the Republican Party. And by not having the sway over the cult, the Republican members of Congress aren't going to be as worried about losing the 30% of the Trump base that they currently are because Donald Trump won't be around to turn them against him unless they 25th Amendment him while he is still alive. And he's there to do nothing but talk shit about J.D. Vance for however long he's got left. TJ says he's hoping for a very nice Christmas gift. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? As I think it was Mark Twain's put it, I never wished for anybody's death, but there are a few obituaries I can't wait to read. Will says they will hide it. Good thing the White House leaks. Yeah, this White House leaks more than ever, and more than anyone previously or after. So if it does happen, they're not going to be able to hide it for long just because of the leaks. Oliver's mom says, ever watch the movie Dave, Doppelganger's President? Yeah, except they'll never be able to hide it with this guy. They will never be able to hide it with Donald Trump, because you're not going to be able to pull off his his ramble, his way of talking, his version of charisma. They're just not going to be able to imitate that with a doppelganger. I just don't see it happening, and I don't see it happening with the way this White House leaks. We would find out about it. TJ says they'd never be able to hide it. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. It wouldn't have. They'd hide it for so long, and it would come right back. Blue says, but isn't Vance worse? Well, yes and no. Yes and no. Vance is worse. Difference is Donald. He doesn't have the pull over the cult, and that is one of the things Donald Trump is using, because they know that if he turns the cult on him, that's 30% of the Republican base that won't vote for whoever he turns them on. They just won't. They'll get primaried, they'll lose in a primary, whatever. And he's got some kind of a sway over the Republicans in Congress. Most Republicans don't like J.D. Vance. So there is that. Beyond that, J.D. Vance would actually listen to people because he doesn't think he's the smartest person in the room. So he would be better than Trump in that he wouldn't be making all of these dumb decisions, and because he's not a petulant toddler and as big of a narcissist, he wouldn't be making these half-cocked decisions and just saying, well, I'm doing it regardless. I'm going to, throw everything at the wall and just, I decided today 100% tariffs on you. He's not going to be doing that. And that's the big difference to Vance and Trump. Jules has sound. That's great to hear. Will says to Blue, Vance has no power base. Yeah. TJ says, no, because MAGA doesn't respect him, talking about Vance. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They don't respect Vance enough. And I don't think, even though Blue says the majority of Trump's followers will back Vance, not necessarily. Especially depends on how they remove Donald Trump. If Donald Trump gets bad enough that he has to use the 25th Amendment, they will never back Vance. He'd be done before he got started. Will says we'd have to go through a presidential funeral and they will attack everyone who celebrates. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They would go after everybody. Thing is, they're going to be shocked. They would be shocked by how big that celebration is going to be. And it's not just going to be in the U.S. It's going to be worldwide. It is going to be a worldwide celebration of, the fact that he's gone. Whether that is he got 25th and removed, whether he gets impeached and removed because Republicans have finally come up to the realization that it doesn't matter if they lose the 30% voting base or not, that they are that they're better off without the MAGA base, or that they're going to lose them regardless and they're better off without Trump. When he is out of the picture, MAGA is not going to be prepared for the celebration that will happen. They thought the celebration after Joe Biden was declared the winner in 2020 was huge. This is going to be a worldwide phenomenon. Will says China will celebrate. Yeah, they will. Because they won't have to deal with the bullshit. TJ says everyone here is welcome to our party. Yeah, that's a great offer, TJ. Oliver's mom says we have to be the better people and respect the loss to the office for a funeral. Maybe during the funeral itself, we can still celebrate the fact that he's gone and out of power. And the simple fact that he didn't want respect for anybody else. That should weigh into it a little bit too. Remember, he threw a big fit because of the flags being at half staff for Jimmy Carter. Will says, you mean Purple Revolution? Yeah. Don't care about the Purple Revolution. I don't trust them one bit. Not a bit. If they truly had learned their lessons, they would not be... they would not still be MAGA. They would not be red. They would not be voting Republican. They would be at minimum independent, or they would be shifting parties. You can't say, well, we learned our lesson this time, because they'd end up stabbing us in the back once we get rid of this particular problem. Will says the office has lost its luster, no respect left. Well, I have respect for the office of the president, just not while this particular person occupies it. Jules says, lying in state takes on a whole new meaning. Or perhaps lying in stench. Yeah. Yeah, with Donald Trump, either one of those could be true. Do Not Go Gently says, I feel bad that I want MAGAs to get what they voted for. Yeah, I don't. I don't feel bad that I want them to get what they voted for, because it's the only way they will understand. And even when they get hit with things as bad as they are, they still do the mental gymnastics trying to make it so it is somehow still Biden's fault. It's Obama's fault. It's Hillary's fault. It's Kamala's fault. It's whoever. They don't want to blame Donald Trump. Some of them are waking up because it's finally biting them in the ass. And maybe that's what they need. But I don't feel bad that they're getting what they voted for. Yeah, TJ says they're already getting what they voted for. A lot of them are. I think it's funny that they're all up in arms and they're mad about the government shutdown and the troops not getting paid. Because apparently there's talk about the troops having to go get stand in line at food banks. Problem is, Donald Trump kept funding the food banks. Don't want to fund them. So how's that going to work? How's that going to work when there's a bigger run on it because the military's not getting paid and can't afford to eat? Will says, I saw the protester at the Kamala event. Pathetic. I didn't see the video you're talking about. But to all the people that protested Kamala talking about Genocide Joe and how bad everything was with the war with Hamas, between Hamas and Israel, are you happy? Did you get what you wanted? I know not a lot of them are probably out here in my live right now, but did they get what they wanted? Seriously. They were talking about how bad it was. It only got worse under Donald Trump. Here we are, you know, what, 8 months over after he took 9 months into his term. War's still going on. No guarantee that this ceasefire is going to actually work. Oliver's mom says, I tried to explain to my mom that my son's health insurance could jump from 10 to 100, and she just shrugged. Yeah. And that's the thing. Without those subsidies, it's going to cost everybody way more money. And they don't understand that. And what they don't understand, a lot of them, is that Republicans don't care. They don't care. They want the Affordable Care Act to fail. This is their version of defunding it. So that way it fails and they have, political pressure on their side to get rid of it. Well, it's not working because it's too expensive now. Because you fucked it up. Their version, let's break it so we can get rid of it. Will says the protesters screamed about genocide being Kamala's legacy. Yeah, they're dumb fucks. What do you want me to say? They don't understand that they were trying to end the war. They bought into the hype machine by the Republican Party because Democrats suck at messaging. TJ says they don't care till it comes out of their own pockets. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't. They could care less about somebody else until it affects them personally. And that's a sad state of affairs. Will says Afghanistan and Pakistan had a border skirmish tonight. They did? Hadn't heard about that one yet. But I wonder how that's going to work for Donald Trump and his I'm a peacetime president. I'm a no new wars president. Will says it was a firefight. I'll have to look into that one. Wonder how Donald Trump is going to respond, or is he not going to care? He may not care. He may not care right now, especially since the Nobel Peace Prize was just announced and he didn't win. So what's in it for him? What's in it for him to do anything to prevent that war? To step in and negotiate a peace or do anything of the sort? He's transactional. He doesn't do anything for anybody else, and he only cares about himself. TJ says he'll do absolutely nothing. Probably. He's transactional and he's lazy. Will says the Nobel Peace Prize is not a goddamn competition. You're right, Will. It's not. But he thinks it is. And he only wants it because Obama won it. Because they talk about Joe Biden maybe being eligible for it or should maybe get it. Donald Trump wants it out of jealousy. It's a status symbol to him. That's how he views everything. Everything with him is a status symbol. Everything with him is, about getting everything for him so he can show off to everybody else. Look at all the things. Look at how great I am. That's what he is. Oliver's mom says, evidently Mrs. Trump brought home Ukrainian children. Are you talking about his mom? Or are you talking about his wife? I don't know what you're talking about there, Oliver's mom. TJ says his diaper's full because he didn't get it. Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. He has been full of it. Without a doubt. He has been full of it since not getting it. Jules says, I love that a woman of color won the Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah. It's, I can't think of her name. It is something Machado from Venezuela. I can't think of her first name right now. But a Venezuelan woman won it over Donald Trump. Talking about Melania bringing home Ukrainian children. I don't know what that's all about. At all. Not familiar with that one, with that story. But if Donald Trump's involved and there are children involved, I'd be very skeptical about any of it. Just because we know he's probably connected to the Epstein files. Joel says Maria Corina Machado won it. Yeah, that's it. I couldn't think of her first name. It was escaping me. Oliver's mom says, I'll have to research it. It came from a MAGA relative. Well, then it may not even be true. It could just be a fluff piece that they're trying to hype up of, look at the good thing Donald Trump's family did. And we know how well they like to lie about the things Donald Trump supposedly has done. You know. It's ridiculous how easily lies come out from that family. When it's all said and done, being connected to Donald Trump is going to be horrendous for anybody. I fully expect to see people putting all their Trump stuff away, putting it back in the closet, and hiding who they really are. And when you're going to have people in 20, 30 years when they pass, and their kids and grandkids are digging through their stuff going, oh my God, Grandpa was a Trumper? And they're going to think horribly of their relative. Jules says, I'm looking forward to the trials. Yeah, if there are Nuremberg-style trials, that would be the worst thing for the Republicans. And there may not be full trials, but I bet you there'll be a full congressional investigation. And assuming we get a Democratic president in 28, because I don't see any way Republicans win, unless somehow the Democrats screw the pooch and give Republicans a supermajority in both houses in the midterms, which I don't think is likely. I think we'll have a decent attorney general, and there will be full-on DOJ investigation, criminal charges, and as long as it's not somebody as weak and as ineffective as Merrick Garland, what's going to come out of it is going to be shattering for the American people. It's going to be worse than what came out because of Watergate. Oliver's mom says, I'm sure you're right since none of you have heard of it. I mean, could be. I know I don't hear everything, so it's entirely possible that that story has some legitimacy to it, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's a fluff piece put out by MAGA trying to spin the narrative. They don't care about fact as long as it puffs up their people as being great. Do Not Go Gently says, do you think we will have the trials? Like I said, it could be some kind of trial, it could be congressional hearings, or it could be a full-on DOJ investigation with criminal trials and 4 years of Republicans getting sentences in front of judges. Trevor says, I heard that Trump had to go back to Walter Reed today because of his heart problems. I hadn't heard that, but entirely possible. I don't buy for a minute that his heart is 15 years healthier than he is. No way. Not with his diet, not with his body shape. I mean, I know I'm not in the best of shape, but I don't claim to have the heart of a 20-year-old. Just not a thing. You know? I guarantee you he is in horrible, horrible shape. Will asks Trevor if Trump has a heart. Trevor agrees, nope. Will thinks there will be tribunals. Yeah, there could be. Jewel said she heard that Trump went back to get a double up on flu and COVID shots. I mean, that's entirely possible. And the funny thing is, Donald Trump wants the credit for Operation Warp Speed in developing the COVID vaccine, while at the same time telling people don't take vaccines, and MAGA base is saying don't trust the COVID shot. Very weird there. Oliver's mom says trials will have to be bipartisan to keep any controversy out of it. You could be right there, but as Will points out, justice over bipartisan. Yeah, I mean, at this point, do we care if it's bipartisan? Republicans aren't playing by the same rules right now. At least this version of the Republicans that are in power. I mean, when it's all said and done, the Republicans may end up having to rebrand. Now, I said that before 24, thinking that they were going to end up losing the 24 general election and getting smoked. But now, with as bad as everything is connected to Donald Trump and how bad they're letting him make things, they may have killed the branding of the Republican Party. Christine says they better rebrand. They might have to. Maybe they merge with the Libertarians or something and become the Libertarian Party. Or something like that. They may have to come up with something or form a new party. Joel says he almost died in 2020 from COVID, then told all of us, it's just like the flu, no big deal. That's because he has to spin the narrative of being so healthy, of being in great shape, of being this peak physical specimen. He knew if he told people how bad it really was, that they'd end up, that they would end up, freaking out and fail the economy. He didn't care about people. He didn't care that they lost 1 million lives. He only cared about the economy and making sure him and his rich buddies made money. Factory Rat says the Democrats are so lost in their messaging they haven't learned a thing from 2024. No, I think they did. I think they have learned a lot. I think one of the biggest problems in 24 was that they spent too much time buddied up with Liz Cheney. They were trying to message to Republicans that they thought they could bring in a bunch of people into the Democratic Party and vote Democrat, instead of making sure they had their side of the aisle locked down and winning. Liam says to Jules about Donald Trump having COVID, that he was on the edge of his seat then, a huge disappointment. Yeah, I think we all were. We were expecting it to get him. Will says ICE is attacking rideshare drivers at O'Hare. Not surprised. ICE is at this point unlawful. They are not following standard protocols. They don't care about doing things by due process. And ultimately, when it is all said and done, they are going to be they are going to be held accountable. There are going to be all sorts of criminal investigations, and they may have to go bottom to top instead, and start with people like Kristi Noem and people like that to figure out who these people are and how this happened. But they will ultimately be held accountable, and it's not going to end well for anybody who is currently ICE. Do not go gently says, as a woman, I think they focus too much on reproductive rights and not the economy. Maybe they leaned heavily into Roe v. Wade, and I thought that was a winning strategy. Apparently not. Because Republicans have found a way to message it that their restrictive bans and stuff aren't the bans that we actually think, and they're controlling the narrative. I don't know. TJ says, I was in Vegas this week and saw no ICE. What's that tell you? Yeah. As Will says, there's no tourists in Vegas. Yeah, tourism's down across the country. Will says, ICE stopped traffic on Michigan Avenue, dragging people out of cars. I've been seeing bits and pieces of that, and it's not looking good. Not looking good for this administration. And if it wasn't for modern technology, how bad would it have actually been, because we wouldn't know any of it. TJ says money rules the roost. Yeah, it's all about money. And the fact that there's no tourism, that's going to come back and bite Republicans, because it's killing the economy. On top of everything else Donald Trump is doing. Liam says ICE only in TJ's Malort. Yeah, I don't think TJ drinks Malort. Although he did send me a video of him getting somebody else to drink it. So he probably keeps it around, and maybe there's ICE for that. Oh, Oliver's mom says tourism way down in Florida. Yeah, it's down all over. I mean, I saw that there was like nobody at the Texas State Fair right now. And that's usually a huge draw for the state of Texas. Do not go gently says, what about the rich versus us approach? I've been saying for a while that they need to run somebody on a New Deal style message of like Joe Biden said, building the middle class from the bottom up and the middle out, and making things fair and equitable again, so you can afford to live on one income, on one salary. It should be doable. TJ says they need to run him. I don't know, TJ. That may be a bad idea. We want them to vote Democrat. Joel says, "Oh dear, no turkey leg sales at the Texas State Fair." I think they were still wearing or still selling turkey legs. TJ says, "Why? I wear pants." Well, I mean, as a start, you wear pants with no diaper, which is better than we could say about the current occupant of the office. I mean, Texas State Fair was so empty that Sesame Street was able to go down there and record. And there was hardly crowds in the background of anything they were doing. I mean, that tells you something. Will says, lots of wasted food. Yeah, all of that food is going to go to waste. Hopefully a bunch of it's at least frozen so they can do something with it. But not a good thing for Texas, but you know, they get what they voted for. Nobody has money to go anywhere. Nobody has money to do anything. Everything is going up. Everything's getting more expensive. And people are watching their money. Blue asks, do you think he'll call for martial law? No. He may attempt it, but there is no mechanism in United States law, U.S. in the Constitution, etc., anything for martial law. It doesn't work. Because martial law literally means the military's in charge. That would mean Congress isn't in charge. They'd be at the direct behest of the president and only the president. And that would never happen. He may attempt it, but it wouldn't end well. There's not enough troops to handle the entire country. It's not feasible. Will says they're also afraid to go out. Yeah, a lot of people are scared to go out. Oliver's mom says, you mentioned food banks. Said they stopped going to theirs. Less food, poor quality, not worth waiting in line for hours. Yeah, I've been hearing that. I've been fortunate that I haven't needed to do that myself. But I've been hearing from people who have, that you don't get a lot. It's poor quality, in part because the funding was cut. And that's a shame, because people need the help. They're cutting food stamps. They're cutting what you can get on food stamps. They did that here in Iowa. They said, okay, no store-bought cookies and things like that. You can't buy cakes. You can't buy pre-made breads and all that stuff. But then they also took away your ability to make the stuff. They took away flour and sugar and baking soda and all of the ingredients. Next year is going to be an eye-opener for a lot of people here in Iowa. And I think when they start messing with people who can't get the stuff they need because the Republicans have taken away what's all food stamp eligible, I think Iowa's going to flip blue because it's going to be a blue wave. Do Not Go Gently says, how do you think the 10/8 festival will go? I think it's going to be every bit as big as the last major No Kings protest, if not bigger, because he hasn't done anything to make people make people like him, to calm anything down or do anything like that. Will says Trump might after October 18th. The No King protest is scaring Trump. Maybe he might try it, but again, there's no mechanism for it to happen. And every turn where he's trying to send the military into these cities, judges are smacking him down, saying, "No, you can't do that." No, even now I didn't read the entire article, but there was something about the military in going into Illinois that they can be there, but they can't help with any of the law enforcement. They can't do anything that they were sent there to do. I'll have to read more into that because it seems like he's told no constantly. Blue says, next question. Do you think there'll be a midterm? Yeah, there will. Because they don't have a choice. States run elections. Now, some of these red states may try to pull some bullshit and say, well, we're not actually going to hold an election. We're just going to award the election to these people. But that won't go over well, not in this country. And if they don't do elections or they try to do something to prevent the midterms, come January 3rd, 2027, this Congress dissolves. Period. And without elections, there's no Congress to replace them. Because there's no mechanism in the Constitution for them to stay over and continue. They would have to pass a constitutional amendment. They don't have the time, they don't have the votes, and they don't have the state legislatures to do that. The whole thing is ridiculous. They just have people scared right now. And I think the midterms are going to happen. And I think Republicans believe their own hype that they're going to win the midterms. And they're going to get blown out. And it's going to catch them by surprise. And it's going to be glorious. Liam says, my 74-mile drive to work is constantly clogged entirely. I don't know about that, Liam. I don't know. People doing what they have to do? I don't know. Will says, no kings have Republicans scared. Yeah. It does. They do have them scared. Because they realize they got people pissed right now because that they are trying to set Donald Trump up to be some kind of authoritarian figure. And the people have realized it and they're not happy. And they don't know what else to do. Oliver's mom says USDA cut and local donations down. Exactly. Will says, you can't buy flour? Flour? What the fuck? Yeah, exactly. They changed... they changed the laws here in Iowa for what you can buy on food stamps in an effort to be healthier. But you can't buy, I think it's processed cheeses. I don't think you can get fresh meats of any kind. No flour, sugar, baking soda, spices, gravy mixes. No pre-made cakes, cookies, bars, any of that stuff. Like no cold rotisserie chickens, none of that stuff. No, because like a lot of our grocery stores around here have like a deli section where they sell pre-made meals. None of those would be allowed anymore. No pop, no tea bags. I think coffee's even on there. No coffee. Like they have drastically cut out what is going to be allowed as of January 1. And there's going to be a lot of people in this state who are going to wake up pissed when they can't go buy these things, who haven't noticed it until now, and they're going to be asking questions. And when it comes down to Kim Reynolds and Republicans, the backlash is going to be huge. Kate says, today is my birthday and I got a certificate from Kim Reynolds right in the shredder. I've never gotten anything from Kim Reynolds like that, but I do the same thing. Do Not Go Gently says, will the Medicaid cuts close nursing homes? What's going to happen to the people with no families? As far as what happens to people with no families, no idea. Will it close nursing homes? Yes. A lot of rural areas require, or they depend on the nursing homes, or the nursing homes depend on Medicaid. Without that funding, they're going to close because they can't. A lot of the people, they don't have private insurance, they don't have private wealth. They need the money coming in from Medicaid, and go from there. They're going to be hurting. Pamela says the military has to step down and not even go. Oh, if they do martial law, yeah. Will says, oh, he may try, but won't work. America is too big. Exactly. Blue says, what about these new machines? You talk about the new voting machines. I don't know enough about that. But just because he bought Dominion Doesn't mean anything because a lot of these places where he's going to put them in are going to be Republican leaning. Places that are Democratic leaning aren't going to trust his, freedom or liberty voting or whatever he calls it. And they're going to be, they're just not going to be bought and used. And if they already have Dominion, doesn't mean, they may just use what they already have and just not get upgrades anymore. Oliver's mom says, yeah, the small rural hospitals. They're another one that depends heavily on Medicaid money. I live in an area with a lot of small rural hospitals. And they will depend heavily on that Medicaid money. And what Republican voters don't understand is the only time undocumented immigrants get the Medicaid funds, it doesn't even go to them. It's when they show up at the ER, they need life-saving treatment, they get stabilized and made well enough to leave under their own power and sent on their way. The hospital gets paid so they're not out that money. That's it. TJ says, I never thought I would see the day when I would agree with MTG. And Do Not Go Gently says, ain't that the truth? Yeah. Jewel says, I don't trust MTG. She wants to be reelected. Yeah, that's part of all that. She's playing this part, trying to be more centrist or reasonable because she wants to get reelected and she's trying to jockey for position to be in a statewide Georgia race. It's not going to happen. I bet you Will would be out there saying the same thing, that she would never win a statewide race. Liam says, and the airport where I work is a massive shit show daily, so I thought everyone was broke. Just because it's a shit show doesn't mean, there are still people who have to fly for this or for that for work. Not all of it is recreational travel. And part of it's a shit show because of the delays caused by this administration. Will says Trump wants to fire air traffic controllers for calling in sick. Do it. Find their replacements. Exactly. Exactly. These are trained people. They think that all these air traffic controllers are just somebody they found off the street, gave them a 5-minute orientation, said, here, do the job. It's not the case. They're highly trained, highly skilled people. They're not easy to replace. Lisa says, even the Native Americans got flour and sugar in their rations. Exactly. Will says, what can you buy? No fresh meat? What the fuck? To vote Republican is to court death. Yeah. Just taking care of something there. Will says nursing homes are already telling families to take their elderly out right now. Yeah, because they can't afford it. They have to do things. Like Kate says, a care facility near her is closing one wing and booting everybody out, or booting out over 40 residents. Exactly. They're doing those kind of things because they can't afford it. They need the money from Medicaid, and Republicans don't realize it. The thing Republican politicians have convinced Republican voters is that, oh, you have your benefits? You're fine. You're not the problem. It's them. They're the problem. And they've been able to split it, and they don't understand when these cuts happen, they get cut too. TJ says, yes, but she's going against her Lord and Savior. Yeah, but she's also worried more about getting reelected. She wants the power. Liam says to Will, I hope he does it. Complete and total economic pandemonium. Talking about firing the air traffic controllers. He might try. They already tried to fire a bunch once and had to bring them back at higher pay. Will says MTG is not winning a goddamn thing statewide in Georgia. I figured you'd say something like that, Will. Do Not Go Gently says, are they playing the video in airports blaming the Dems? I have heard that. I don't know that for sure, but I have heard that. Oliver's mom says, already short on air traffic controllers. Exactly. They were already short, and they act like they can find anybody off the street, give them 5 minutes of training, and they can do the job. That's the thing with DEI. They go against, oh, it's all DEI, hires, etc. No, it's just reminding you that there are qualified people in other demographics than people that look like me. That's all it is. These people still have to be qualified to be an air traffic controller. They still have to go through all of the rigorous training and everything. That's like when Charlie Kirk says, oh, if I see a black pilot, I am immediately skeptical if they're qualified. They still have to go through all of the same training. That's just fear-mongering, racist bullshit. Oliver's mom says assisting nursing care facilities will also suffer. Different from nursing homes. Yeah, they are, but same problem. They require Medicaid funding. And when the funding's not there, they're going to get burned. And we have been warning Republicans in rural areas for a long time that all these cuts are going to come back and bite you in the ass. They didn't listen to us. You know, we told them all the time what was going to happen, and they kept saying you're wrong because they were convinced that it was going to only affect somebody else. And now they're going to get bit. And I don't know if I should have any sympathy for them. Oliver's mom says I had 8 weeks of training and a year of probation for 911 operator. Exactly. It's not like you can just pluck somebody out, put them in the job, and tell them to do it right off the bat. It is a skilled position where you have to have training and all these things. Will says Republicans don't care. They don't. Will says rural Americans need to find out. Yeah, they do. And I live in rural America. I have farmers in my family, my extended family. Do not go gently says they still don't understand Project 2025. No, they don't. They don't. Even though it's being implemented, we warned them. Even now, when Donald Trump, he's talked about it. He pointed at Russell Vought and said of Project 2025 fame, admitting he knows about it. And they still think we're making it up. That, oh, we're just doing it because we hate Trump. It's bonkers. Pamela said, did you see Boomer on the purple thing? He was right on. Yeah, I said the same thing. And Mike and I talked about it a couple days ago when I was on the Rational Boomer podcast. We both said the same thing, that I don't trust them one bit. If they really had learned and they had really changed, they would be shifting to independent or they'd be blue. They just want to get out of the current situation they're in, and they're going to go right back to being dumb fucks and voting against everything and voting the same way. It's bonkers. Blue says exactly. It's being implemented as we speak. Yeah. Will says farmers believe Trump will save them. Good luck with that. Yeah, they do. They voted for him in part because they thought he was going to bail them out again if things got shitty. They don't realize he's the reason things are shitty. Oliver's mom said, I actually read a bunch of Project 2025. It's scary. Yeah. And they've turned around and they have gotten a bunch of stuff going with it. The whole thing is scary as hell. Oh, thank you for those gifts. And thank you everybody who has gifted so far this live. This thing is, Republicans are finding out now. They're on the backside of it. And once these changes actually start hitting, people are freaking out, and they're going to continue to freak out, and they're going to blame the Republicans. Like I said here in Iowa, changing the food stamp thing. Republicans have complete control. And in fact, when they changed it, they had a supermajority in both chambers. It's only the Republicans' fault. They didn't need bipartisan support to change the food stamp thing. We will now, as of 26, have one of the most restrictive food stamp programs in Iowa, or in the nation. It will be one of the very most restrictive programs. And people who are on the food stamp program, on SNAP benefits, etc., are going to go, what the fuck? Because I don't know how many of them are actually paying attention and how many of them are ready. And then when you add the fact that food banks aren't getting funded and there's just not the money there, that is going to really affect people. And there's going to be a lot of people suffering. A lot of people are going to suffer. And there's no one to blame but Republicans, at least here in Iowa. I'm expecting Iowa to flip blue in next year's midterms. I think Rob Sand wins. I think Rob Sand wins the governor race. I'm not sure who's going to end up being the candidate for Senate against whoever they pick. But not having the name recognition of Joni Ernst is going to, it might help them a little bit, but it'll also hurt them because some people will only vote, they just voted for the name they recognize. That may backfire. Pamela says, it's insane. I go to another state. Coffee and tea, come on. Yeah. They cut out a ton of stuff. Like, even juice. Like, a lot of your juices, when you buy, like, a 64-ounce jug of juice, it's a percentage of pure juice and a percentage of water. Those also won't be allowed. You can only get 100% juice. Like, the whole thing is coming back. It's going to be horrible. Do Not Go Gently says, what about Peter Thiel and all the other foundations behind this administration? Yeah. I think when it's all said and done, they're going to be held accountable too. There's going to be investigations. They're going to dig into it. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be held accountable, and it's going to be bad. Oliver's mom says, I support my son and myself on SSDI, and I can't get food stamps or Medicaid for my son. Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of people in that same boat. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And I hate to say that, but it will. I'm sorry that it's that bad for you already, but it's not going to get better, at least in the short term. Jules says, Eric, with all this gerrymandering BS is going on, will it matter if people turn out and vote blue? Yes. Because when voters turn out, Democrats win. We can override the gerrymandering if voters turn out. Like in Texas, they are hoping that their gerrymandered districts will work so that they end up with, like, instead of a 60% Republican favor voter base, it'll be like 54%. But that's only if the voters that had turned out at the same frequency and the same level previously still show up. If the Democrats that previously in that area just didn't show up to vote, turn up, because they're like, oh, we might have a chance at winning. And, there is a chance that with enough turnout, we may win even if they gerrymander the hell out of these districts. I've said before, I think it was on last night's live, they said there's a Supreme Court case that may give the Republicans 19 seats. Well, that's great. I think the Democrats can win 40. I think they take the House. I think they flip at least 40 seats. 2 to 3 of them here in Iowa. There's one that I doubt they can flip, but it wouldn't surprise me if they flipped the other 3. Oliver's mom says Maryland is gerrymandering to turn its only red district blue. Good. Good, they should. Fight fire with fire. Pamela says, Ohio is so gerrymandered. It is. And they want to make it worse. They want to make it worse. But when they gerrymander so bad, it also gives, like I said, it gives Democrats a chance to pick up seats in those areas, especially if they're pissed because, you're in one district for so long and you really like the person who is representing you, whether that be Republican or Democrat, and now they've gerrymandered it to try to pick up a seat and you don't have that person anymore, you may vote against the Republican just because you're pissed that they gerrymandered out your representative. Oliver's mom says every representative counts. It does. And here's the thing. With the current makeup of the House of Representatives, they only have like 220 Republicans right now. We only need to flip 3 seats to flip control of the House. That's it. And with as pissed as people are about Republicans right now, I think that's easily done. But I think 30 to 40 seats is probably the bare minimum. I think Republicans are going to get their asses kicked and they're not prepared for it. Jules says, has anyone read Kamala's book, 107 Days? I have not. I intend to read it at some point. It is on my list of things to do. I just haven't gotten around to getting a copy and or going down to my local library and seeing if they have a copy. I doubt, given the makeup of the areas around myself, if they would have a copy, but they might. Blue says, what about Senate? Senate's going to be tougher. Senate, they need to pick up 4 seats. And we've been talking about that Talrico in Texas. He's at least looking like he's got momentum. We could maybe pick up a seat in Texas. Iowa might be a pickup. And I think, and even if they don't flip the Senate, as long as we flip the House, then it doesn't matter if they have the Senate for 2 years. Because nothing will get done. Donald Trump won't be able to pass his legislative agendas. You'll have a presumably Speaker of the House, Hakeem Jeffries. But I'm not entirely sure I want him to be Speaker. And Democrats may pick somebody else to be the Speaker. But you would have a Democratic Speaker of the House. So none of the hard Republican bullshit will end up getting through. Kenneth says, took 23 in stamps benefits because I'm over the limit. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how they do things. Oliver's mom says, however, someone will make it a banned book. Wouldn't surprise me if they try to ban it. Barbara says, but a Republican bought the voting machines. Only one brand. And I don't know how that works with existing machines, if they need updates and things like that, if he has anything to do with it, or if they can keep working with the machines as is until they quit working. Some of these districts may have to buy new machines now, and really the only areas that are probably going to be willing to work with him are going to be Republican leaning anyway. Because I'm guessing Democrat leaning areas aren't entirely going to be willing to work with this guy, especially when his rhetoric is saying things like, well, we're going to get back to, full transparent voting and hand voting and paper ballots and all those kind of things. He's not setting himself up to do himself any favors to get liberal-leaning places to use his voting machines. TJ says Jeffries is disappointing. He's been very disappointing. Now, we've never seen him as actual speaker. And truth be told, he'd be a better speaker than Mike Johnson. But I guarantee you my dog leaves things in the yard that would make a better speaker than Mike Johnson. Jules says that Hakeem Jeffries is bought and paid for by AIPAC. Entirely possible. I just don't like the fact that Hakeem Jeffries seems to be making the same plays that Nancy Pelosi would. And pretty much if she says do it, he says yes, ma'am. It's ridiculous. Like when he gave that fiery speech at the very beginning when he first became, I think it was minority leader. He came out and he ripped the Republican Party from A to Z. You know, I had great hope for Hakeem Jeffries, and he's been nothing but a disappointment ever since. Oliver's mom says he tries to walk the line too much. He does. And that's a trademark Nancy Pelosi play. They're trying to play 90s politics. They still think they can do things bipartisan and not offend anybody when we're in a street fight. Sue says Amazon Prime offers credits toward books on audiobooks. I was able to listen to Kamala's book. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. That's good information for you people to have. Audiobooks, a lot of people like them. I'd prefer to physically read the book because I tend to read faster than what they narrate at, but that's just my preference. Pamela says he's her protege, talking about Hakeem Jeffries being Pelosi's protege. Yeah. Exactly. Pelosi needs to get out of the way. I've said it a lot. I say it over on Mike's Lives, on the podcast from over there. You can't tell me that there is nobody in the entirety of San Francisco that could run as a Democrat and win other than Nancy Pelosi. We need these old people to step aside. We need people around my age, middle-aged, to step up and start doing shit. For far too long, we have sat back and let the older generations control things, and we were very apathetic about it and just said, well, they got the handle of it. Why should we deal with it? You know? We need younger people to get involved. We need to get rid of some of these geriatric motherfuckers. And look at Dianne Feinstein. Okay? Great senator. Nothing against Dianne Feinstein from California, who passed away a couple of years ago. But she was in her 90s, still in the Senate, still casting votes, when a judge had given her daughter power of attorney and said, you are not in control of your mental faculties to the point where you can't control your own money. But she was still in Congress casting votes on legislation. That's a problem. And it's both sides of the aisle. You got, then on the Democratic side, or the Republican side, then on the Republican side, you got fucking Chuck Grassley. 92-year-old Chuck Grassley who wants to run again in 28. He'll be 96 running for re-election. It's insane. These old people need to get out of the way. Oliver's mom says, I agree. However, the old were once middle-aged. They were. But it's time for them to move on. There are fewer years left for all of these older people in Congress. Again, going back to Chuck Grassley, he's 92. How many years does he have left, realistically? 10? Maybe? There needs to be somebody younger representing the state of Iowa, somebody in their 40s, where they have a future, where the decisions they make will affect the future they have. It's ridiculous. Do Not Go Gently says, Sakit Chakrabarti is challenging Nancy. I hope I got that name right. Good. Hopefully she gets primered out. And that's not even a knock against Nancy Pelosi. I liked Nancy Pelosi to a point. but it is time for her to step aside. Oliver's mom says age limits and term limits should apply. I've said the same thing. Term limits cover would be great, but there also should be like an upper age limit to where you can begin your term. So if you say 2 terms in the Senate for 12 years, and you say, okay, 70 is the upper limit. That means you don't have somebody who's 69 running for their first term to get elected to 2 12-year terms to be 81 at the time they're over, or something like that, or 91, something like that. I don't know what the answer specifically is. The problem is with age limits and term limits, that would or 91, something like that. I don't know what the answer specifically is. The problem is with age limits and term limits, that would require a constitutional amendment. And there is no way that these motherfuckers in Congress are going to vote against themselves and put in term limits and age limits. They're just not going to. Hell, Ted Cruz brought up a constitutional amendment to put in a term limit for no more than 2 terms in the Senate, I think it was, or was it 3? It was one of the 2. And he would have term limited himself out past, I think it was 2 full terms, and he was starting his 3rd when he introduced it. That he would have basically screwed himself out of a job. It's dumb, but they're not going to put it in. They just won't. I don't know how we get it in there without Congress acting, but we got to do something. They have to change something. Pamela says no more than 67. That might be a good age. Kenneth says, in California, and yes, on Proposition 50. Yeah. That's the one on redistricting to redistrict out those 5 seats to offset what Texas is doing. And the only reason it's there is because Texas went ahead and is gerrymandering their state. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. And it's only going to be temporary, I think, until after the next census, and then they get redistricted again based on the census. Pamela says, I'm 69 and I'm getting slow and forgetful a lot of times. I'm in my early 40s and I get slow and forgetful at times. Oliver's mom says, in salary for life, ? Might be wrong. I think they get a pension of some kind, and I don't remember how many terms you have to serve to get it. I think it's more than 1. I think it's 3 in the House, and I'm not sure about the Senate. But then, yeah, you get paid for the rest of your life. They have one of the cushiest jobs in the country. And like right now, House of Representatives isn't even in session. Mike Johnson just says, yeah, we're not going to be around. And they still get paid. Don't have to go to work. Don't have to produce anything. Don't have to pass anything. Government's shut down. And they still get paid. And like Kenneth said, and health care for life. Yeah, and they get better health care than most of us do. By any stretch of the imagination. By any stretch. TJ says they get a pension and health care for life. Yeah, they do. Joel says Chuck Grassley was born during the Depression, raised on a farm without electricity or plumbing. Yeah, that's my point. You know, the era he grew up in is gone. It is so far removed that if we heard about somebody in this day and age, besides like the Amish who choose to live that way, not having electricity, etc., is, we'd be horrified. We would be, but that's the era he lived in. He is so far removed from what we have going on right now. It is not funny. He needs to retire. But I also heard what the plan is for him, and they only have until next year to do it, if they decide to go, is that, because I guarantee you Rob Sand wouldn't do this, is that he retires and Governor Kim Reynolds would appoint his grandson, Pat Grassley, the current Speaker of the Iowa House of Representatives, to fill his seat. So that way, when people go to the voting booth to go vote in 28, when Grassley's seat would be up again, they'd still see the name Grassley, and they would keep voting based on the name recognition, not realizing that it had passed from grandfather to grandson, because Chuck Grassley is that old. His grandson's about my age. I think he's got great-grandkids and maybe even great-great-grandkids. Oliver's mom says, but others have to work and aren't getting paid. Exactly. Exactly. With this government shutdown, a bunch of people are having to go to work and they're not getting paid. Oliver's mom says, Republicans want all of us to go back to that era in time. They do. They look back at the 50s and 60s with nostalgia about how great it was. What they don't realize is what was great about it was that the economy wasn't rigged against people in the middle class. You had the rich were given tax incentives so they weren't getting hit with 91% tax rates, and they were investing in their companies. They were paying their workers more. You could afford to go out and start a business, and not only could you start the business, you could support your family on that business. And a lot of people can't do that in this day and age. It was a different time, in part because we were taxing the rich so high that they were incentivized to pay people better, and it just made everything better across the board. Warren says, I'm voting hell mother effing yeah on Prop 50 in California. Yeah, we need to. Do not go gently, says Trump went so far back as to say the Gilded Age. Yeah, oh good Lord, the Gilded Age. That was before the Depression, and that helped lead to the Depression. At the rate he's going to lead us into the Second Great Depression. Liam says, pay him on commission only. Pass something worthwhile to society, you get paid. Oh, wouldn't that be lovely? Oliver's mom said it's hard to even live on 2 incomes now. Yeah, it is. Jules says they were incentivized to do more with their money than just be lazy and greedy. Yeah, exactly. There was incentives to not get taxed at a ridiculously high rate. And they invested. They started more companies. They paid people better. There weren't incentives just to keep it sitting in bank accounts and tied up in assets. But, all right, I have been going about an hour and a half. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I thank you all for joining me. It was a great live. Going to end up, I'll probably be doing more of these. This will end up over on YouTube and on Spotify as soon as I get it downloaded and put up over there. These will be up over there. The video will be up on YouTube. The audio will be up on Spotify. Analytical Iowan on YouTube, Analytical Iowan on Spotify, and you can catch all of my TikToks also on Blue Sky, Analytical Iowan on Blue Sky. So, thanks for joining me, and I will catch you the next time I go live.